Chapter 180. Shizun, how could I let you down? It was the first time Chiwaning had held hands with Moran like this. Fingers interlaced, palms pressed together. That was enough for him. It was too much even. Thank goodness Moran didn't do anything else, or he would have tumbled hundreds of feet out of the sky to make his escape. Thank goodness indeed. As for Moran, he'd held hands with Chiwaning like this far too many times. This wasn't enough for him. It was far too little. Thank goodness he hadn't done anything else. Otherwise, hand-holding would have led to kissing, which would have led to him asking for even more once he'd gotten a taste. Thank goodness indeed. Nevertheless, Moran could tell Chiwaning longed to flee. No sooner had they landed and dismounted the sword than Chiwaning sped off without a word. Within 2 strides, he realized he was being too hasty and slowed down. Yet, a few more strides later, he heard Moran's footsteps behind him. Overcome with embarrassment and panic, Chiwaning quickened his pace again. Moran wordlessly watched him go. His heart itched and ached, burning up and melting all at once. He saw Chiwaning, eyes fixed on the ground, marching straight toward a large tree. "Watch out!" Moran cried. A loud thud. Well, he had hit it head on. Moran rushed over. "Does it hurt? Let me see." Chiwaning pressed a hand to his forehead, absolutely silent. After a moment's recovery, he set off walking again. As Moran moved to go after him, he heard Chiwaning call over his shoulder. "Don't follow me." "But I'm also going back to rest." "Stay outside and cool off in the wind before you come in." Cool off in the wind? Moran laughed. How could he possibly cool off? "I held your hand. My heart will be warm all night long." But he heeded Chiwaning's instructions and hung back. Instead, he stood under the cool, clear moon, watching Chiwaning dwindle into the distance until his figure disappeared behind a wall. He walked over to the tree that Chiwaning had crashed into. Stilling for a moment, he pressed his forehead to its trunk, the bark covered in rough scars. He closed his eyes. Chiwaning liked him. In a rush of fluttering petals and flowing waters, spring had sprung on the solitary isle. The luminous moon hung overhead, and the crisp clouds shielded the slumbering sun. The tide surged in the darkness of sky, and sea merged into a single expanse. Not a wonder in the mortal world could compare with the one sentence. Chiwaning liked him. No matter how bad with words or how stupid he might be, Moran was overwhelmed by a tidal wave of emotions at this moment. Love could make a poet of even such a crude simpleton as Mu Weiyu. Chiwaning liked him. Chiwaning liked him. He pressed his forehead to the rough bark, trying to calm down, to get a hold of himself, to cool off, It was impossible. He could never again be calm, cool, or restrained. His closed eyelids fluttered, tenderness and ecstasy trapped between his lashes. The corners of his lips quirked up, his dimples tucking themselves deep into his cheeks, overflowing with sweetness. Chiwaning liked him. Liked him. The person he was so hopelessly infatuated with. The very best person in the world. The person he wanted to hold in his arms for the rest of his life. Chiwaning. The man who was once the terrible Emperor Taxianjun, who was now the cultivation world's esteemed Mozongshe, stood on a desolate beach of white sand, pressing his forehead to a great rustling tree, with his eyes screwed shut, laughing out loud, his shoulders shaking. Because Chiwaning liked him. Even the wind smelled sweet. Even the crash of the waves sounded sweet. Chiwaning liked him. He laughed with gaze downcast, but after a while, his laughter turned to tears. His mouth split into a madman's grin as tears streamed down his face. It was so sweet, yet his heart throbbed in agony. Chiwaning liked him. Since Butterfly Town, He had secretly carried the brocade pouch with their intertwined locks of hair. He liked him. Suddenly, Moran wanted to know how long Chuaning had been standing in his shadow, silently keeping him company, wordlessly waiting for Moran to look back, to reach out, to turn around and see him. How long had Chuaning waited? In this lifetime and the last, 2 decades in total? No, even longer than that. He was Mu, who had seen all there was of the mortal world. He knew time was the most priceless thing of all. In his days of power, when his whims had been as changeable as the weather, he could have had any precious plaything or sweet-talking beauty he wanted. But time, flowing past like a river, was the one thing he could never catch. Someone willing to give up 10,000s of gold for you, that was desire. Someone willing to give up a dazzling future for you, that was love. But someone willing to give up 20 years of their life for you, their very best years. Someone willing to wait for you without saying a word, without asking for reciprocation, and without asking for results. That was foolishness. It was really the height of foolishness. Moran's throat was dry. Bitterness climbed up his throat and rushed into his mouth. He thought, Chuaning, you old fool, why are you like this? How could you be like this? How could I, Mu, let you be like this? You're the best person in the whole world. And me? My hands are washed in blood. Even death would be too merciful for me. I'm the bane of the world, a villain who deserves never to be reincarnated. I bullied you, resented you, disappointed you. I drove you to your death. You have no idea what I've done. You have no idea. Moran hugged that tree, his sobs carried away by the sighing sea breeze. What had he done? As Chuaning looked on, Moran had chased after somebody else. As Chuaning looked on, Moran had stupidly waited for that other person to turn around. In the illusion within Jincheng Lake, he had said to Chuaning's face, Shimei, I like you. He had taken a knife and carved out Chuaning's heart. And what had Chuaning done? He had remained silent as a stone, unmoved by the currents rushing past him. He had acted completely unaffected, even as the blade tore into his chest. He had cared for Moran, forgiven him, and stayed by his side until death. All the way until his death. Moran howled with laughter and wailed in pain. Under the moon, surrounded by the sea and sky, witnessed by no other soul, he cheated toward the brink of insanity. Chuaning had spent 2 lifetimes, keeping his feelings from Moran until death and beyond. The humblest thing this lofty and unyielding man had ever done was fall in love with someone. For that someone, Chuaning had done all he could, even when he learned, over the course of his endless waiting, that there would never be a place for him in that person's heart. Even when Chuaning knew that person wouldn't love him back, he'd chosen not to bother him or alarm him. He chose not to cause a whit of trouble for him. He chose to hold to his last scrap of dignity. As he lay dying in the last lifetime, all he'd said was, It was I who wronged you. I won't blame you in life or in death. And when Moran had confessed to him in this lifetime, Chuaning, this infinitely good, infinitely proud man, had only said, I'm no good. Nobody's ever liked me. Taxianjun, who were you? What have you done? What have you done? Were you blind or were you mad? How did you miss this? How did you let him down? Chuaning lay in bed with the curtains drawn. Through the misty shadow of the fabric, he watched the candlelight outside the canopy. His face burned and his heart raced, but his thoughts had slowed like a half-frozen stream. In contrast to the man outside, whose happiness was marred by the stain of his own sins. Chuaning's happiness seemed especially simple and pure. He reached a hand up and stretched out his fingers before his eyes. By the time he realized what he was doing, he had already covered the back of his hand with his other palm, as if mimicking the way Moran had held his hand just now. When Chuaning finally snapped out of it, he sat dazed for a moment. Then annoyance immediately consumed him. He loathed himself for being so infatuated with Moran's silly show of strength that he couldn't put it out of his mind. Hopeless. Seething, he pulled his hands apart and even slapped the back of his right hand in self-admonishment. A creak, and the door opened. The curtain fluttered in the errant night wind. Chuaning turned over at once and closed his eyes to feign sleep. He heard Moran step into the room and cross over to the bed. A tall, broad frame blocked the guttering flame of the candle. Even through the curtain, Chuaning could see that the light had suddenly dimmed. Moran's shadow over the bed seemed to press down on Chuaning. He could scarcely breathe. Shizun, are you asleep? Moran's voice was soft. For some reason, it carried a raspiness in it, as though it had been washed in salt water. Chuaning didn't reply. Moran stood for a long time. Then, as though afraid to wake Chuaning, he carefully and quietly made up his bed in the same spot he'd slept the night before and blew out the candle. The room was instantly plunged into darkness. Now that the piles of butterflies and haitang blossoms were gone, the shadows were deeper than before, oppressively so, enough to sharpen one's senses. The darkness brought with it a sense of both dread and anticipation as to what the rest of the night might hold. But Moran didn't do anything. The scoundrel, who had once frequented brothels and made a name for himself in the pleasure districts, suddenly turned clumsy and cautious, careful and protective. He settled himself down, fully clothed. Chuaning let out a breath he'd been holding. He felt a slight twinge of disappointment. But before he had time to feel ashamed, he heard Moran get up. The bed curtain swished aside as Moran lifted it. Heart practically in his throat, Chuaning still didn't move a muscle. He stayed curled up, pretending to be asleep, and even did his best to slow his breathing. He hoped Moran wouldn't notice anything amiss. What had Moran gotten up to do? Chuaning had never been with anyone, never broken his abstinence. His only knowledge of anything sex-related came from those preposterous dreams. He was like someone who had never been in water, whose terror of the waves far outweighed his thirst. He would prefer to start off by splashing around in a small pool where the water came only waist-high. If he were to face directly the rushing rapids of a river, he feared he might drown. He was not a little afraid of Moran trying anything more daring. Chuaning didn't know if it was because Moran could feel his minute trembling or hear the faltering rhythm of his heartbeat, but he only stood calmly in the dark. Then he leaned down. He bent low enough that Chuaning could feel the fervent masculine aura radiating from his skin, as though that blazing hot chest was about to crush him. But Moran just looked down at Chuaning and smoothed a stray lock of hair behind his ear. Then, with a rustle of the bedclothes, Moran tucked the blanket more firmly around him. Chuaning's nervousness eased. He felt both satisfied and not, but at least it seemed that Moran was still a well-behaved person. This thought was still forming in Chuaning's mind when the allegedly well-behaved individual dipped his head downward. Chuaning only sensed something soft and warm meet his cheek. In an instant, his mind burst into a tempestuous cascade of waves that pummeled the rocky shore and sent snowy sea foam flying. Moran's scent swirled and smoldered around him, a torturous heat. Moran had kissed him on the cheek. How many could behold their beloved's sleeping face and bear merely to look, to tuck them in and bid them good night? Morayu had exhausted all of his control and patience. This body of his, which had so strenuously held all his deepest desires in check, finally let slip one soft and tender kiss. Chuaning's heart pounded mightily. Poor Yuheng of the night sky, this matchless hero, calm and unruffled wheresoever he went, found his cheeks set ablaze and his palms slicked with sweat between Mobayu's heated breaths. For a moment he could think or feel nothing at all. Even his breath was stopped in his chest. His heart galloped so rapidly that it didn't seem to belong to him anymore. The heavens and earth were a single hazy expanse, a blur of nothingness. At the same time, a flame seemed to flare to life within his belly, and brilliant dots of light skittered across his vision. Utterly dazzled, he could think only one thing. Moran was kissing him, even if it was just on the cheek. He had no capacity to consider anything else, such as how long that kiss lasted. His sweaty fingers clutched the blanket tight, and his lashes quivered uncontrollably. It was a good thing that the night was so dark, Moran couldn't see his irrepressible trembling. It was also a good thing that Chuaning's face was hot and his awareness muddled. He didn't feel that when Moran kissed him. A warm teardrop slid down his cheek and came to pool quietly in the crook of Chuaning's neck.